Muslim, Gentile, black man, white man. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. This world is real.
I was with the communication platoon of the 23rd Marines, the 4th Marine Division.
Okay. And your rank at that time, amigo?
I was a PFC.
Okay. And your actual job title is communications?
Yes, I was schooled in telephone lineman.
Okay.
And this involved, especially on an island like Saipan, we were involved in establishing communications by wire and climbing up the poles and wherever we could to string the wires.
Okay.
Then the unfortunate things would happen is the tanks would come through and tear up our telephone lines once we established communications, and that meant going out at any hour of the day or night and repairing the telephone lines. And sometime you'd take a few riflemen with you to make sure that you were safe and you wasn't getting hit by a sniper.
Let's talk about Iwo Jima now. You're with the 4th Marine Division.
Mm-hmm.
Did you actually go in on February 19th?
Yes, we boarded our landing boats at 5 in the morning after the normal steak and eggs breakfast, which we knew we were going to have when we made the landing. And we were circled around outside, over the turf until we landed at probably about 3:30 in the afternoon. And our objective, the 23rd Marines, was to take the first airstrip. Well, we made it, I think, late that night, but one of the things I always remember of the landing is that the first hole I jumped into, there was a Catholic priest in the same hole, and he was naturally pretty scared and everything, like all of us were, but he said, "This is my first engagement," and he says, "I just came from the Women's Marines in Camp Lejeune," and this was quite a bit different than being with the Women Marines. And he says, I know you've probably been through this a few, so I felt comfortable being with a Catholic priest in case my time was up and I was going to get it, but it worked out all right. And
let's back up just to the night before the landing. What you remember, where you were, and what your thoughts were the night before the landing.
Well, we were, I believe, on the USS Logan, and we were on a ship that had a shakedown crew on there that they happened to run into another ship that night, and the bow of the USS Logan was banged up, and of course it was like I said, I had previous experience landing on the Saipan operation, so I was real concerned about what was happening. And when we did get ashore, I was so seasick that I didn't care whether I had gotten it or not. I was just so sick. But I had encountered seasickness before, but most of the time I felt good aboard ship except on the landing boats because you're bobbing up and down. And when we were landing there, of course, by that time the Japanese had the gun emplacements pretty well zeroed in on us. A lot of the landing boats got hit before we got unloaded. But I remember one fellow, but I just looked at his picture last night. He got as far as tripping going off the landing boat, and he got back on and went back to the ship and never got to ashore, so he was kind of fortunate that he didn't have to go through the next 27 days or whatever we spent there.
I'm sorry, did you say you were a PFC?
Yes.
Okay. Had you been around combat before then?
Yes,
Okay.
I was in combat when I was 18 years old.
So what's different about what did you know about Iwo Jima?
Well, we had as soon as we had found out where we were going, we had taken several trips out around the Hawaiian Islands and made landings, and we didn't know where we were going. And then after we were out for 2 or 3 days and didn't have any landings, they broke out the big relief maps and showed us the island and how it looked, and had different times during the day where we would get together and they would go over the island as much as it was known about it.
So how are you feeling the night before? Were you nervous? What was the mood of the
Well,
troops?
I tell you, Larry, the biggest thing is you have crowd psychology. You know, you probably think, well, I'm an individual and I'm faced with what could happen and everything, but then you got people all around you that are faced with the same situation that you're involved in. And that's the biggest thing that I found is that, and you're young, you're 18 years old, you don't have a damn worry in the world. At least I didn't. So if I always figured if my time was up, I was going to get it. And if not, I was surrounded by well-trained Marines, which later in my career I found it wasn't that nice when we went into Korea and ended up with a bunch of weekend warriors that never had any training except playing the band down in Houston, Texas. And I got in with them and they didn't know as much about what could happen. So
we'll jump into Korea here in a bit.
Okay.
So we're landing on Iwo Jima now. You're tell me about getting into the landing crafts, if they were Higgins boats, and then the trip into shore, what you were seeing and hearing.
If I remember right, we had learned from experience if they got any coral reef. So I believe what we did, we transferred from Higgins boats into Amtraks so that you could go over the coral reef or anything and get up and actually land on the beach. And that's, if I remember right, that's what we were in.
So tell me what you remember, John, about your approach to shore and what was happening in the water and on the beach.
Well, they were shooting from bunkers and enclosed, whatever you call them, that they could, the guns would come out, fire down on us, and then they'd be concealed again. They would pull back and their gun emplacements. And then we also landed under a rolling barrage from the big ships out there, the big cruisers and destroyers. They were firing over us when we went in, but there was so much gunfire that it was just amazing that we could get in under it, but we did. And
so walk me through the landing, what you remember, getting onto the beach, and then what you're seeing and what you're hearing.
Well, the first thing is you got to look for something to get in, some hole in the sand on Iwo Jima, and I even got a little bottle of the sand that shows how you can't really dig into it because it keeps filling up the hole once you dig in, but you just got to find a place and you got to think, is this one incoming or is this outgoing? Because there was firing going on from all directions. And we just slowly made our way up to what we thought was the airstrip. It wasn't much of an airstrip as you would imagine by seeing ones around this country, but it was enough that they could land on it. And it was kind of unique also that the landings we did make, they were always shaped in like a 4. The 4th Marine Division, they were laid out that way, so we thought that was kind of unique that the airstrips were laid out in a numeral 4. But in the first night, it's hard to remember, but I think there was a lot of rain and it was chilly. It was even, well, it was in February 19th.
Do you remember, tell me about the casualties and the Marines, what were we seeing? I mean, they were all over, weren't they?
Yeah, you would hear them yelling, "Corpsman, Corpsman," and the Corpsman did a terrific job. You know, in the Marines, we didn't have our own medical force. It was all Navy. A lot of the sailors thought that then they'd go in and be a hospital corpsman. They end up wearing a Marine uniform all the time. And they were very good. And it was just an experience you don't really want to forget. You know, you think of it every once in a while, but you try to think of something else to forget about it.
Did it bother you when you came back home?
No, I I'm getting some compensation from the VA, but it's not for Iwo, it's from Korea.
Yeah. So on Iwo Jima, tell me what you, the first couple of days, tell me what your job is. You're laying wire.
Laying wire, and I worked quite a bit with the Navajo Indians. I was working with in what they call a message center, where you would get the code clerks to, you would get the messages and then give them to the Navajo Indians, and they would go on yata hey, and then the Japanese were so confused because they couldn't understand the Navajo language, and the Indians were a very important part of the operation.